We're looking at a worksheet called Border Grid Lines, and what we're seeing here are various border effects. And it's highly unrealistic to think that we'd be using all these different kinds of border effects within the same worksheet. But it does give you some flavor of the kinds of things we can do when we apply borders. Now, the worksheet's called Border Grid Lines. There's a distinct difference between borders and grid lines. On this worksheet, for the moment, we are not seeing any grid lines. If you want to control grid lines, go to the View tab in the ribbon, and we can turn the grid lines on or off. This applies to the entire worksheet. They're either on everywhere or they're off. Now, even when they're on, as they are right now, sometimes they are obscured by the fact that we've got color backgrounds in cells. So even though there are grid lines here, we're just not seeing them because the color is essentially hiding them. If you are using border features, in some situations, the grid lines are a bit obtrusive. They're kind of in the way, but by no means am I saying that you can't use borders and have grid lines together. I think many times you will. But let's turn them off at least momentarily. View tab, grid lines, turn them off. Now, let's imagine I want to apply a border here, maybe like the one up here. I'll just highlight the cells. On the Home tab, we go to the button right here, Draw Border. Now, I might say something else as we point here because this could be a feature that was used recently here. But when we click this drop arrow, we see tons of choices. If I just want a simple border for the highlighted cells there, I'll choose Outside Border right here. Now, many times when you're applying this feature, you don't see the result very clearly because the cells are still highlighted and they're highlighting the effect. So I'm going to click outside of this and we can see that a border was put there. Now the question might be, is it always going to be red? No, in fact, most of the time it's not. And why is that? Well, there's another option out here when we use the drop arrow. You could have chosen, and maybe I did recently, a line color here. So maybe I forgot that. At different times, you might want to draw a red line, blue line. Here's the automatic black color. That's probably more common. And you can actually draw a border grid this way too. I'm going to draw a grid that way. And we'll come back to that feature as well because there's another aspect to it as well. I think more commonly what we're likely to see here, though, is a simple use of highlighting some cells. Maybe I want these to be in a special border. Go to this feature right here, click the drop arrow, possibly thick outside border. That's another variation. Once again, we're not so sure of the effect until we click somewhere else, and there we see it, different than the thin border. If you want to apply a thin outline border, notice over in columns G and H, we're listing the keystroke shortcuts. Either one of these, actually it refers to the same shortcut. We can use Control-Shift-7, you can say it that way, or Control-Shift-ampersand if we simply want to apply a standard thin line border. Maybe I want to highlight these cells for whatever reason. I want that border in effect. Control-Shift-7. Once again, we don't see it until we click elsewhere. There it is. So we can apply a border that way as well too. There's another choice out here as well too. Most of the time we do highlight cells ahead of time. Maybe I want a special border on these cells right here. Click the drop arrow here, go all the way to the bottom, More Borders. And sometimes we'll consider different kinds of borders. The style here. Here's one with dashes. You see those already in the worksheet. Possibly we want that. We got a preview to the right. We could put an outline of those. And also, since we might have multiple cells highlighted, how about some inside too? Now, this visual might look different if the area that we highlighted ahead of time included multiple columns. It doesn't, so we're only seeing this kind of look. We've got other choices on the perimeter here. I doubt if you want to use those, but in some situations, those could be acceptable. We can use these buttons to take off or add borders. Watch what happens as I click this border right here. The right border disappears or it comes back. And you can also click out here to add or apply borders as well. So lots of options. If we wanted color, click this button here. Dark colors usually work best. Here's a dark blue. We'll come back and apply the outline in the inside. Now it's a dark blue color. So lots of situations where you might want to use these variations here. And you can also get here by way of Control-1. In other words, activate the Format dialog box. Highlight the cells here. Control-1. You won't necessarily always be at the Border tab, but you can certainly click that tab and get there quickly. And I'll try a solid border this time. Solid red, thicker, outside and inside borders. Click OK, and we see what's been applied over there. You can remove borders easily too. Maybe I don't want borders in this section right here. I'll highlight the cells or possibly some of the surrounding cells. But if I simply want to get rid of all border types here, regardless of what they are, Control-Shift-Dash, Control-Shift-Underscore, you can say it either way, that will remove borders. Control-Shift-Dash, there it is, they're gone. And we could do that for the entire worksheet if we wanted to. So these are easy to apply. And again, going back to that other idea, maybe I want to draw a special kind of border for these expenses here. So I'm going to get rid of these borders first. Highlight these. We'll use our keystroke shortcut, Control-Shift-Dash. They're gone. But now I want to highlight these here and apply a special kind of border. Another option, we saw it briefly before, not in its full context. Clicking the drop arrow for the borders button here, we might begin by saying, let's pick a line color here. It would use that red again. And we could come back again and say, let's pick a particular line style. Maybe I want to use this double type line here. Then we can come back and say, let's draw a border. That activates the drawing pen. So we can put a border around these cells. And you see it happening as you drag too. So that's certainly one option. We might reconsider and say, let's draw a border grid. And that's also available here. And the visual tells the story immediately. I'm just going to point in the upper left corner and start doing this. We're drawing a border grid. So it may be a little bit of fun and games here, but it's easy to use. It's easy to take these off. And by the way, the pen is still there after you've drawn this. You could draw these elsewhere too, but at some point you say, I'm finished, so press escape, and we're back in normal mode again. So these features are easy to apply and a variety of different techniques to get there. I think for most people, most of the time, the process begins by selecting cells, highlighting the arrow here on the font group, making your choices this way. But again, don't forget, we could go to more borders, make lots of choices this way, or at other times possibly use that choice called draw border grid. Remember, you might want to choose line colors and styles ahead of time. Lots of options, lots of capabilities here. And all along, the grid lines might have been present or they might not have been. We could easily add those or take them off on the View tab. Remember, these apply to the entire worksheet. They're on or they're off.